to show you exactly why the younger generations are quiet quitting, saying careers are dead, nobody wants to work anymore, all that shit that you hear. I'm going to show you exactly why that's happening.
Wow. Yeah, I can't wait to hear what this guy has to say. Is he a lazy bum, or is there something fundamentally broken that's causing him to say this? Let's take a look.
My wife and I have been together for 7 years. In those 7 years, we came up the old-fashioned way. We have 2 kids. We really struggled for a long time. And we just now, after 7 years of struggling and sacrificing, got to a point where we're no longer paycheck to paycheck. She finished school, I worked my way up at my job, where we make $120,000 a year, combined household income. And in 2 years, we financed and budgeted things out. We can probably save around $40,000 for a down payment for a house. After 7 years of struggling and working our asses off and build ourselves up into this country to buy a house, let me show you what $120,000 a year, $40,000 down payment with good credit gets you. This was the only house available in our budget range, in our location where we live. There was one house for sale, and it was this one right here.
Wow. Yeah, that sucks. And it's no secret that around the US, a lot of cities and towns, the affordable homes have been bought up. And with housing prices skyrocketing over the past couple of years, and with mortgage interest rates now around 7%, it's no surprise that a lot of people are just priced out of their local markets. Let's run the numbers and see what this guy can actually afford. So he said that between his wife and him, they take home $120K a year in gross household income. And if we just do a quick calculation, let's just assume that he's in a state that doesn't have state income tax. That would mean that his take-home pay is roughly $100K. Let's just assume that he takes $100,000 home after tax, which gives him about $8,300 a month. And he said they were really financially responsible and saved up money and they don't have any debt. So congratulations on that. Let's take a look at what kind of housing payment he can afford. Now, if we assume a 30 to 35% after-tax debt-to-income ratio, meaning what basically, because he has no debt, what is his mortgage payment of his take-home pay? If it's roughly a third, which I think is reasonable, you don't really want to go much higher than that. That means he can afford anywhere from $2,500 a month to $3,000 a month. So here's what the breakdown looks like. At a $400,000 purchase price, where he puts 10% down, or $40,000, which he said he had saved up, and a 7% interest rate, which is where mortgage rates are right now, after taxes and insurance and mortgage insurance, that gives him a payment of a little over $3,000 a month, right? So basically, he can afford about $400,000 as a purchase price with $40,000 down. And there's a lot of cities around the US where you can't get a shoebox right now for less than $500,000. So it's no surprise that if he's in a pretty populated area, that's maybe one of the only homes that's in the $400,000 range.
This is what we can afford with $120,000 combined income and a $40,000 down payment with good credit. Our cars are paid off. We sacrificed. We worked hard. We worked our way up in this country to get to a point where we're no longer paycheck to paycheck and we can save money. This is what we can get. Everybody that is in the older generation saying, well, I guess you better go to college. Guess you better go get a degree, find a trade, something that makes you more valuable to the community. Was it always like that? Is that how it always was? Did you have to be a doctor, a lawyer, an architect, an engineer to get a livable house with a very substantial income? My mom worked at Michael's. My dad was a pressman in a printing company. They both bought a house that is nowadays probably $600,000.
True.
At the age of 23, my mom worked just over minimum wage at Michael's, and my dad worked a little bit more than that at a printing company. This is what's going on.
Yeah, look, I really feel for this guy, and this type of story is becoming more and more common. Millennials and younger have been told this story, work hard, have kids, live the American dream, right? And a lot of people are just getting priced out. So just this morning, inflation came out and the official numbers are 6%, which is down a little from 9% over the past couple of months. But if you look back over the past 20 or so years at the cost of things that eat up the most of our income, like medical care, right? Hospital services, college and tuition, medical services, childcare, these things have just gone up so much more than hourly wages. So I guess if you're someone who doesn't get sick, doesn't have kids, and didn't go to college, maybe inflation hasn't hit you so much. But even in day-to-day lives, a lot of people are experiencing inflation at the supermarket, right? The cost of food and travel has just gone through the roof, even used cars. I've been paying a lot of attention to this guy on Twitter, a car dealership guy who posts a lot of information just about the car market. He goes, used car prices are defying gravity. Here's one of the reasons why. Used car supply is down a staggering 25% from 2019 because of COVID. In 2019, there were 2.9 million cars. In 2023, 2.2. And the reality is the middle class in America is dying. We're turning into a country of the haves and the have-nots. So the question is, what does a guy like this do? And the good news is he has options. There are things that are in his control that he can do to dramatically improve his life. Let's take a look at a few of those. So number one, it might make sense right now just to keep renting. And the best way to figure out if you should buy or rent is you want to look at the true cost of buying versus renting in your area. If you want to stay in your area, we'll get to that in a second. But to come up with the true cost of purchasing a home is outside of actually purchasing the home and having closing costs, your maintenance costs, right? What's your mortgage interest, which right now is high as hell? What are your property taxes, which have gone up because values have gone up? Homeowners insurance, HOA fees, maintenance costs, right? If you're not renting, you got to fix that roof or that leaky faucet, and mortgage insurance if you're putting less than 20% down, right? Those are the fixed real costs of living in a home. And I'm going to simplify these numbers. We're not taking into account tax savings or appreciation or anything like that. But historically, the true cost of owning a property is on average around 5% of the property's value. So in his case, prior to all this inflation, a $400,000 house cost about $20,000 a year or $1,650 a month. Right? Nowadays, it's actually closer to 8 or 9%, depending on where you are and how much you're financing. But that cost is now about $32,000 a year or $2,650 a month, which that is a 60% increase in real cost. And so when you run the numbers, if you can rent for less than $2,500 a month right now, it might make sense to do that. And again, that's just a short-term fix. But that still doesn't fix the bigger issue, which is it's becoming harder and harder for people who make a good income but are still considered middle class. It's becoming harder for them to survive, let alone thrive and build wealth. So outside of the things like don't drive a car and take public transportation and don't have kids, which he already has too, and we have population implosion anyway, the other options are you can either get a new job, you can create a side hustle, meaning turn your hobby into a job, which a lot of people end up hating in the end. Or the one option that I see as becoming more and more viable for a lot of people is geo arbitrage, where you earn in dollars and you earn a nice income and you live in a cheaper area, right? You're arbitraging based on location. And look, I know not everybody can do that, right? This guy might be a blue collar worker in his local neighborhood. I don't know. But if you're somebody who is struggling, I think one of the easiest ways, if you work online or you have the ability to live anywhere and earn an income without being tied to your local market, that is by far the best way to instantly increase your cash flow. Because at the end of the day, guys, the only way to get ahead is to beat inflation, meaning you accumulate and build your assets faster than this fucking inflation can erode at its value. And it's a challenge. And for a lot of people that are just getting by, I can see where that's a struggle, especially with official inflation rates at 6% and the cost of everything going through the roof. But the strategy, really the only way to get ahead is to fight like hell to, number one, increase your monthly cash flow, which you can do a couple of ways, right? You can increase your monthly income. You can minimize expenses, which you can really only do so much. And then if you are a high income earner, you can do some things to minimize taxes and then take as much of that monthly cash flow and invest it in things that outperform inflation. That's really the only way to stay ahead of this inflation monster. And personally, I spend about half of the year outside of the US and I take advantage of geo arbitrage, where there are places that you can have a better quality of life for cheaper. And I'll link up the video that I did a few months ago in Bali where I was talking about why so many people were giving up on the American dream and some steps you can take to build your own dream lifestyle. But again, I really feel for this guy and anybody else that's out there struggling with inflation. If you have any questions or if I can do anything to help you, feel free to leave a comment or hit me up on Twitter. And let's stay focused on what's in our control, right? Doing everything we possibly can to increase our cash flow and invest wisely so we can beat this inflation monster. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Share it up, and I'll see you next time.